Waterford.
Live from Waterford and Dungarvan, this is Waterford at 1 News.
Good afternoon, I'm Sinead Aherne. Today's top stories. The government is confident that restrictions can be eased from Monday. There's no increase in the number of COVID cases being treated in hospital in Waterford. A Waterford MEP has praised a local surgeon who's created a reusable medical gown. And in sport, Tottenham boss Jose Mourinho has denied reports he wants the Premier League resumption delayed. The Taoiseach says he's increasingly confident that coronavirus restrictions can be unwound from next week. The National Public Health Emergency Team is meeting today and its advice will be considered by Cabinet Ministers tomorrow. Leo Varadkar has warned that some social distancing and hygiene practices will be around for a long time and said travel to the EU won't return for months. However, the Taoiseach says the journey back to normal life should begin next week.
Over the last 7 days, we've seen the lowest daily number of cases and deaths since March. As a result, we're increasingly confident that we will be able to move to Phase 1 on Monday. It's worth remembering that we're still in Phase 0. All things going to plan, Phase 1 will begin on Monday, if and only if it's safe to do so. The moment we assume that our progress through the phases is inevitable, we risk going backwards.
Meanwhile, the head of the HSE is concerned a lot of people think May the 18th is a big single moment. Stephanie Rowan reports.
It's hoped Monday, May the 18th, will mark the beginning of a phased reopening of the country. If given the green light, groups of 4 can gather, DIY centres will reopen and sports like golf and tennis will resume. The National Public Health Emergency Team has been meeting to discuss the easing of the restrictions and its advice will go to Cabinet. Speaking after the meeting, NEFIT member Dr Cillian de Gascoigne says the recent COVID-19 figures have been encouraging.
I think the measures that have been described at the press briefings during the week have been broadly positive from the point of view of the number of cases, admissions, intensive care admissions, but no decisions have been finalised at this point.
But the head of the HSE is concerned people are pinning a lot of hopes on Monday. Paul Reid says any easing of the restrictions would only be small.
And so we would have a concern that you see a surge of people thinking the 18th is a big single moment. The 18th isn't a big single moment. We've a number of weeks ahead to make government to make various decisions in terms of restrictions. But the 18th is not the single big moment. It's a minor step along the way.
We're due to find out tomorrow what the plan will be for Monday.
There's been no change to the number of cases at University Hospital Waterford last night. There was just one confirmed case of COVID-19 on site. That's according to the HSE's daily operations update. There are a further 6 patients awaiting the results of testing. University Hospital Waterford had no confirmed or suspected cases of COVID-19 being treated in intensive care. A Waterford-based surgeons initiative to develop reusable clinical gowns for medical staff and hospitals has been hailed an example of a COVID-inspired business opportunity. Gareth Higgins created a durable, washable gown which is in use in the ophthalmology and ENT departments at University Hospital Waterford. Green Party MEP Grace O'Sullivan's hoping EU COVID economic recovery funds could help these kind of enterprises to grow.
He came up with a solution to produce a gown for the surgeons. There's many of them being made locally by a seamstress. They're perfectly effective. So this is just one example where people are innovating and they're coming up with solutions. So the monies that will be available will be looking to ways that recognise that we need to reduce the supply chain. Instead of going out of the EU, that we now need to look at building resilience within our own countries and as members of the European Union.
The government says it's looking into alternatives to solve the childcare crisis for frontline workers. It's after the scheme, which was due to start in 4 days, was scrapped last night. Childminders were due to go into the homes of healthcare staff at a cost of €90 a week per family. CEO of Parentline, Aileen Hickey, says there were concerns about the scheme's viability from the start.
I suppose there's the insurance costs and the other employer responsibilities, and then there's obviously always going to be the fear of potential health risks and getting infection for them. So it's very understandable that the scheme has essentially failed because of the low take-up by childcare service providers.
A fifth-generation publican in West Waterford believes some proposals to reopen pubs will not work. Restaurants are allowed open at the end of June, while pubs have to stay closed until August 10th. James Clancy is the owner of Clancy's Bar and Guest House in Tallow.
One is that there'd be no seating at the bar. For rural pubs and local pubs where people know each other, that's the first place people sit, is the high stool. And to take that out of a bar, it's not going to work. The vast majority of my customers, that's where they sit. And if they don't have that option, I can't see that. You know, people are creatures of habit. They're not going to sit at the lower tables at the back. The whole idea of a pub is to be social, is to come in and meet people. And if you've people all spaced out at different tables, you won't have that chat, you won't have that crack.
He says a lot of rural businesses will not survive COVID-19.
I would definitely think so. I think there'll be a share of pubs that won't reopen. And it's not just pubs. Several smaller businesses in country areas, small towns and villages just won't reopen. And that's the very harsh reality. Like, a lot of these businesses would have been, you know, just taking Tallow, for example, and any similar sized place. You go back 20 years and the number of small shops and businesses that would have been here that time compared to now. And that's ever before COVID-19 was heard of. So I don't know. It's very, very bleak in terms of small businesses.
COVID-19 restrictions will result in a massive decrease of new homes being built. That's according to developer Noel Frisbee, who told Damien Tiernan on Daysha today that the process of building a house will now take much longer.
We completed over 100 houses last year. I would say this year will be a disaster. And with regard to the whole thing, I classify this year 2020 as a total forget year and just write it off. I couldn't even estimate how many units we will complete this year. I'd say hopefully 40 anyway, you know.
He says costs have increased, but they cannot increase prices because of the wage levels paid in Waterford.
The actual costs involved will magnify. It was bad enough with costs of everything else that was going on. But now we have all the extra costs. Obviously, the quicker we can do something, machine time and everything else, machines will be sitting there lying idle, and they are costly businesses to have around a building site, I can assure you.
Shane Ross says the National Transport Authority will work with the council in Waterford to improve walking and cycling infrastructure. It's part of efforts to allow for greater social distancing in our cities as COVID-19 restrictions begin to be lifted. The Transport Minister says Dublin City Council's draft plan is due within days.
So my department is funding the NTA to work with the local authorities in developing COVID mobility frameworks, which will set out specific plans to deliver things like widened footpaths, temporary protected cycle facilities, including new contraflow routes, revised bus routings and bus priority measures, and enhanced pedestrian priority zones. The first of these frameworks is being developed with Dublin City Council, and it's intended that similar plans will be implemented in Cork, Limerick, Galway and Waterford, and works identified will be funded through my department's Sustainable Mobility Investment Programme.
People working from home during the pandemic are clocking up the equivalent of an extra working week each month. New research from LinkedIn shows Irish workers are doing an average of 38 hours overtime. It's also found over half feel more stressed or anxious than before restrictions were brought in. Lisa Finnegan, Senior HR Director at LinkedIn, says many people are blurring the lines between home and work life.
There's that sense of presenteeism. Even though I'm not in an office, I can't be seen, I still want to make sure that everybody knows I'm working hard. And I guess also just having the opportunity to close over the laptop and leave the room. It's very different when you don't have a bus to catch or a train to get, when you are just sitting in the comfort of your own home.
WLR Sport, Ireland's local station of the year.
Starting with soccer, where Tottenham boss Jose Mourinho has denied reports he wants the Premier League resumption delayed. There have been reports Mourinho was demanding a month with his players before the first fixture, pushing back a planned start date of the 12th of June. In a statement, Mourinho says he was desperate for the Premier League to resume and extremely proud of how his squad had stayed fit in lockdown. In Gaelic Games, former All-Ireland winner with Donegal, Mark McHugh, has revealed he was one of the players who said they would be against a return to action this year. A Club Players Association survey found that 22% of players would not return to training or playing before a COVID-19 vaccine is found. 21% said they weren't sure. McHugh plays for Kilcar and Donegal.
I just felt there's too many factors involved with going back to play, especially club football. You know, the testing's not going to be up to standard. You know, there's no point saying that, well, there's not going to be people tested every week. People have to go back to their families. People have to go back to their jobs on the Monday. It's all right when we look across the pond or look across to America and see teams are being isolated in hotels. You know, they're being tested every day or every second day.
While in golf, Rory McIlroy has confirmed that he plans to play in the PGA Tour's next 3 tournaments when the season resumes next month. The revised schedule is set to return with the Charles Schwab Challenge in Texas from June 11th. That'll be followed by the RBC Heritage and the Travellers Championship. All will be played behind closed doors. WLR asking you to stay at home. Our next bulletin is at 2.